Guten Morgen. Welcome to the Lowdown. I'm Doblo. I'm your host. Yesterday I spoke a little Spanish there. Y'all probably wondering what I was saying. Maybe y'all couldn't get a translator in time because that was pretty quick. What I said yesterday was Yo soy la uno brazo bandido, which means I am the one-armed bandit. Which I am. If you were wondering, I am the one-armed bandit. At least in my mind I am. Guys, I just had me a big old cup of mud. Big old cup of coffee. Got my heart pumping. Got them arteries going. Got all my little ventricles opening and closing. And I feel better. I threw in a little grizzly pouch, which is basically just a hyped up version of nicotine gum, is my conclusion on these pouches. But man, they'll get you fired up a little bit. I knew I was going to have a longer scaled show today, and I thought, you know what? Let's go get us a can of that old grizzly stuff, throw it in, maybe we'll get a little going. We'll get moving here. We'll get rolling on the river. Seriously, coffee, it's a staple. All the men in my life drink coffee. Some women too, but really all the men drink coffee. I don't care if it's 110 degrees outside and we're baling hay. You're going to get a cup of coffee whether you like it or not, buddy. That is the God's honest truth. Coffee come around, guys, in the 9th century. It was, I think, Ethiopia created it. And it just spread, you know. It's a global staple now, as we all know. Everybody from different cultures has a different way of drinking it. And even the Native Americans, before coffee made it to the Americas, they were drinking their own versions of coffee. The Great Lakes tribes, they had, I want to get this right, I think they had what was called the Kentucky coffee tree. And they specifically would plant that tree in areas where it would grow so they could have access to it. They would use holly, different things like that. But the Native Americans were onto it, well, we don't know when, but they were onto it just as long as everybody else. Even before, we expanded over here and took over the U.S. Cowboys, they had a lot of different ways of making it. And if you go read just some fiction, historical fiction about the cowboy days, you don't have to just sit there and bore yourself to tears with some nonfiction literature about how we expanded the West. But if you go back and just read some fiction stuff, read a good Western book, or an American book, exploring book, you'll find out that there were a lot of ways to make coffee. The cowboys, they would use different things. They would use barks, different kinds of leaves, whatever, brew it, steep it, let it become coffee. I'm sure it wasn't great, but it was something. I've heard a lot about chicory coffee back in those days. So coffee's been a staple for the world for a very, very long time. It's certainly a staple for me. It's just good stuff, man. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was having to stay at the hospital all the time, they had a coffee pot, out in the break room for people that were there, people that work there, all that kinds of things. So I told I think it was the first night I stayed there, I told all the nurses at the nurses' desk, I'm like, guys, when y'all get the coffee brewed in the morning, doesn't matter what time or if I'm asleep, come wake me up. I'd like to grab a fresh cup. So they did, and I went and got me a cup out of the old coffee pot there and come back and let it cool off, and I took a drink, and it was so daggone watered down. It might as well have just not even been coffee. So I walked up there to the nurse's desk, and I said, guys, I tell you what, you set that coffee pot on that burner for about 2 years, leave it on. Let it hit puberty and grow up a little bit, and I think we got something here. But for right now, I'm gonna have to ditch this and make me a trip to Starbucks here. They got a Starbucks inside the hospital. So me and my pole, all my machines and beepers, we made us a trip down to Starbucks, got us some of that good stuff. Some of that good. It really does matter. I don't know why, but coffee's important. It to me. Guys, let's move on. We're going to talk about coffee all the time. I can digress. Okay. I got my legal pad out here today. I don't have any exact information written down. I've got bullet points with just some highlighted names that maybe are a little crazy. First thing I want to talk about here is I want you all to be as proud of yourself as volunteer firefighters. I really do. And when I say this, I need you to know I absolutely support volunteer firefighting. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for doing it when you don't have to, when you're not getting paid, when you're risking your life to go do something selflessly for no money. I genuinely appreciate you. In saying that, I've never met a group of people that are more proud of what they do. So I am telling everyone, be as proud of yourself as a volunteer fireman. I would also like to know, in a place I live, how effective firefighting is as far as homes when most of the department lives quite a ways away from where they're going to have to get to a station, get dressed, get on a truck, and go. Versus fighting a fire that's 20 miles out of town. It's not a knock on them. They can't fix that situation, and we don't have the government resources to make a bunch of fire stations all throughout the counties. We don't have enough resources, apparently, to pay for anything. They need more money, apparently. So it's nobody's fault personally that I know. We just have some issues there. But I just wondered the effectiveness and if houses simply burn down and right now, because of the lack of resources, if they're just showing up to put out, to quench the flames that have already burned out, basically. It does seem that way, and it's not a knock on the fire departments around here, for sure. I really appreciate you guys, especially showing up to wrecks in the middle of the night in the rain, in the fog, risking your lives on a highway, a little bitty old country road to put out a vehicle fire or help people out of a wreck, things like that, because that's dangerous. People drive like maniacs. We're going to talk about driving too. I'm going to bring in a little bit of my truck driving stories, just some inside info I've got on driving from doing that for so many years. So, but be proud of yourselves, people. We are all 100% created equal. That's a lie, actually. We're not created equal, but we do deserve equal rights. And we don't all get the same opportunities. We see people that seem like they're just doing great when we're working our tail ends in the dirt and we're not making progress. We're spinning our wheels in the mud. We don't all get equal opportunities. We can't compare. That guy you're comparing yourself to might be a dummy. He just had some good opportunities. So just keep that in mind. Be proud of yourselves. Most recently, I had to go update my license, had to get some vehicle tags, stuff like that. When I went up to the desk there to get my vehicle tags, a woman asked me if I wanted a veteran tag. She saw it on my license. And I was like, well, sure. And she's like, well, it'll be $75 more. I'm like, wait, so you're charging me more for being a veteran just so I can tell people I'm a veteran? That seems strange. I think I'll go with the regular plate if you don't mind, actually. I'm not really sure what that was about. Money grab, obviously, but it was annoying nonetheless. Now I look at veterans tags as a different thing. Especially, Vietnam vets, Gulf War vets. There's a lot of different veterans out there. I don't really understand why we would be charged more to get a tag. But I guess we are. And it is what it is. Let's talk about... Guys, I got so much here to talk about. Let's go right into truck driving because I got a little bit of news I'm going to talk through today. But I'm going to go into this truck driving bit I got kind of set up in my mind. So I drove for 5 or 6 years. I haven't done the exact math, but I drove a lot. So I'd leave the house at 6 in the evening. I would get home at 6, 7 in the morning. That was the ideal schedule. Sometimes it went longer, sometimes it went shorter. I would do that 6 days a week or 5 days a week. And spent a lot more. Listen, I've spent so much time on the road. I've driven more miles. I've driven enough miles that it will take most of you till you're 40 to even get close to driving how much I have driven. Got an international driver's license. I've driven all over the country. The only cool job we had on our deployment, I got to do simply because I was the only person there that could drive a 5-speed. Which leads me into this conversation. I had no idea how much more things I could do than most people simply by just having been raised as a country boy. A lot of just stuff I just thought all boys grew up knowing that they just don't. And it's not their fault for not knowing. But if you live down here, there's not this giant access to money. You don't pay people to come to your house to do work. You do it yourself. And Grandpa doesn't care if you're 14. But you better go get in the pickup and drive that trailer over to the field that's 3 miles away down the sketchiest back road you ever been to, because we got hay to load up. And it doesn't matter if it's a 5-speed or a 4-speed. You've been using a clutch on a tractor and a dirt bike and a 4-wheeler. You understand it, so figure it out. And so I've spent a lot of time driving. And I'm going to talk to you all about a couple of things I do here that makes driving better. First of all, I bought a Charger, a Dodge Charger. It is not a fast car. They weigh like 4,000 pounds. They handle a road really well. You can hit a country road and have a lot of fun in them. But it's not like it's just a rocket ship. And I don't use it like that. I do not think I have ever just, from a dead stop, hit the gas to the floor. I do not feel any need to do that. But I tell you what it does really well is when I need to pass somebody and it's a busy time of day, I can still do it. When I'm on the interstate and there's these large clumps of Buckeyes everywhere, and there are groups of people everywhere just muddled up together because they don't know how to get away from each other, what I do is I don't care if I have to slow down or speed up dramatically. I just try to get away from everybody. I have no fear of me driving down the road, but I do have fear that a teenage girl or a 50-year-old woman who's mad might do something crazy. Really might do something crazy. So you want to get yourself out of dilemmas where you might put yourself in a dangerous position. And that just is being around people on roads. So that's really the only cool thing about the car. And I did the same thing in trucking. If I am dealing with somebody that's being annoying or somebody that can't drive the speed limit, they want to go 10 under, but every time I go to pass, there's a vehicle coming, I'm just going to hit the shoulder and take a leak. Let them get down the road. I don't need to fight with people on the road when I'm just trying to get through my work day. And it's really a lot safer. It's a couple of things I've noticed. So, okay, minivans and fishing boats before 8 o'clock in the morning are the most dangerous people on the road ever created. Asians, women, all those stereotypes, they throw them out the window. That's not even that accurate. But minivans and fishing boats before 8 in the morning, they'll kill you. And I imagine if I was driving that minivan with 7 kids in the back and they're all screaming, nobody's happy, I'm also going to be hauling some tail in, getting them to where they need to go. So, but they'll pass you in a blind fog in a corner. They do not care. Fishing boats, I don't really understand that one. I guess they think if they're there 15 minutes faster that the fish will bite. I'm not sure what that's about, but they are ruthless. Fishing boats before 8 a.m. are ruthless. They'll fight you. So watch out for both of those in the morning time. If you're on the interstate, look out for trailers. Look out for pickup trucks. with trailers and pickup trucks hauling campers, you don't have to have a license to just go drive a camper down the road in your pickup or a trailer. And not always are these people knowing how to do it. Campers are super susceptible to getting death wobble back there. The faster you go, the more likely it is. So when you get on an interstate and you're running 80 miles an hour, you'll start seeing them starting to wiggle back there, and it can get out of hand. They catch wind. People aren't prepared for it. They have no driving history, towing, and it's dangerous. It really is. When I was driving a semi, I just stayed as far away from them as I could. For absolute sure. I'll tell y'all a funny little tale, though, about truck driving. Oh, P.S., my handle on the CB was Jabberjaws. I'm sure none of you can figure out as to why someone would call me that, but it was. And you don't get to pick out your handle, you know. Maybe some people do, but really, most of the time it's kind of picked out for you. So I was Jabberjaws. Anyhow, I was getting to drive my dad's big semi for a while. Big green show truck, basically. Big brand new 389 Peterbilt. And, you know, I'm a 23-year-old kid, dummy. And so I was enjoying it. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm out there stretching my legs out, letting the wheels turn. Big fancy truck, feeling like somebody. I stopped at the same exit every night. Stopped down there at the Clinton exit down in Tennessee, and I'd get my fuel. And so I go into the bathroom one night, and when I step out of the bathroom, there's this pretty large man standing there. I'd say maybe 6'4", 6'5". He got that old bald head with the horseshoe wrap around and a big old beard. Pair of bibbed overalls on. He said, "You driving that green Pete out there?" And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh God, I've cut him off somewhere 10 miles ago, and he saw me get off the exit, and he's coming to let me know how he appreciated it. But I didn't lie. I told him the truth. I said, "Yes, sir." He stuck his hand out there real quick. He said, "They call me Red Dog." I said, "By God, they call me Black Cat. Good to meet you." And so we got to talking there. He said, "Which way you headed, boy?" I said, "Well, I'm headed back up to Kentucky. I'm going to get off at the 141 there at the Caravel exit." He said, "That's the way I'm headed, buddy." He said, "You want to ride together?" I said, "You bet your tail I do." So the whole time we drove back to Kentucky, he's calling me Black Cat. I'm just happy the guy didn't whip my tail. I never saw him again. Who knows? But I tell you what, that's the truck driving community. It is, used to be for sure the truck driving community. Now it's overrun by dummies with no CBs. And listen, not having a CB in a semi is legitimately a safety hazard. It shouldn't even be legal. State police hate CB radios because we call out bears. State police is a bear. So, you know, we called them out. If they're sitting on the side of the interstate in the dark, everybody knows about it for 25 miles. So they hate them. But it is legitimately a safety hazard to not have one. When traffic stopped around a blind curve or when you top a hill, you need to know that's coming up because you might not have the ability to stop depending on where the traffic is when you crest a hill or a turn. So it used to be like that. Everyone had one, even regular vehicles. And now more than half of the semis don't have them. And it's really made it a struggle. And it's also took away from the lifestyle that was trucking. So, you know, I don't know how they're going to fix that. They probably never will. Truck driving's changed, and it's more just like a daily job than a lifestyle now. We'll move on from trucking. We're going to probably talk about that, I imagine, a few more times too. Let's get on to a little bit of the news here today. Oh, actually, I wanted to tell you guys about FedEx. So the owner of FedEx, I think 1973, he couldn't pay his bills. They ran out of money. They couldn't pay the fuel bill. They couldn't pay, the payroll, anything like that. And they were about to go under. They were legitimately about 5 days away from losing the business. So the owner of FedEx took his last remaining $5,000. He went to Vegas and he gambled. He turned $5,000 into $20,000 overnight. And in 1973, 20 grand was a good chunk of change, people. A little different than 20 grand now, and 20 grand now is still a good chunk of change. He went back, he paid his payroll, paid his fuel, and we have FedEx that it is today, which is probably the major, or at least in the top 3 major distributors of products in the world in shipping. So what I'm getting at there, and it goes back to the Army, and it'll go to life here too. When your back's up against the wall, when you're under fire, you must do something. You cannot simply wait for life to come and take all the things away from you. You have to move. You have to make a decision, and you have to move. That is life as well. When in the military, they teach you that, so that way you're not just sitting there and waiting to be surrounded. You know, if it's 1-on-5 and they got you pinned down, you can't simply sit there, or they're going to slowly surround you and it's over with anyways. So whatever you got to do, you got to move. And that's really what the FedEx guy did, right? He just moved. He didn't wait to be surrounded by taxes and bankruptcy. And life is like that too. If your back's up against the wall, if you've just lost your job, buddy, you got to gamble. If not, you're going to lose probably. If you got nothing to lose by gambling, gamble. Go. Make something happen. Do something. Don't just sit there and let it come for you. That's craziness. So I thought that was interesting. I thought it related a little bit to multiple things in my head, so I wanted to get that out there. Guys, we're going to talk now a little bit about different things that are happening in the news. And the reason we're not doing a long-scale episode on the cancer journey, on the Army, is, first of all, I'm not ready for the cancer journey long talk yet. It's not that I'm not ready. I just didn't want to do it today, actually. The Army, I want to really have all my ducks in a row for that conversation. There's going to be a lot of veterans out there listening to it. I want to make sure they get a good show out of that. And for you guys, I need to find a way to at least explain certain acronyms and certain lifestyle points that you all won't understand. So that one's going to take me a couple of days to maybe sit down, put some bullet points up on my legal pad here to explain. The big one for me today is RFK Jr. just got rid of prior authorization in insurance. It's really a huge win for Americans. I posted it up on my Facebook wall there, and I said, if you don't know, now you'll never have to know. It's terrible, guys. The prior authorization through insurance, and insurance itself, is killing the medical system. It's making doctors not want to be doctors. Generational children that come from doctors' families are being told now, go into engineering, because it's not worth the hassle of even dealing with insurance, even if that's where their mind is in wanting to help people. They've ruined it, as the government and insurance typically does. I'll digress there. So the prior authorization, what that does is, like, I'll use me for an example. I just had this happen to me 4 or 5 days ago. So I had a PET scan, which is a full body scan where they can detect cancers and stuff, a CT and an MRI setup. My PET scan did not get approved because my cancer is located only in one place right now. So it would have without prior authorization, but I had a PET scan 3 months ago. And if my cancer has not reportedly spread or nothing has changed, they won't allow you to have a PET scan every 3 months. I think it's every 6 months. So now I have to go get a CT, and the only way I'll get the PET scan is if things get worse. Which, okay, but what if the cancer spread and I didn't know it? And we make plans to go forward, and I wait 3 months and it had spread, and now it's way worse. That's the kind of stuff pre-authorization really messes up. And so I'm super proud of RFK. I was pulling for him. If he would have ran for presidency, he would have got my vote. he went after Fauci. And guys, I'm not even going to get on the Fauci train because I'll say some real mean stuff on here. So he went after him. That made me happy. He has a lifetime of doing legalities to clean up waterways, stuff like that. He is a lawyer. He understands law. And as we have seen with Trump, all these judges and all these random little attorneys and people we've never even heard on the news are putting they put a dramatic pause on things by throwing up certain legalities. And I really think RFK would have been able to navigate that pretty well. He has a lifetime in the court. But the prior authorization thing was huge. It looks like, while we're speaking on Trump and judges and things like that, it looks like the Supreme Court had a ruling this morning that these state judges and all these people who try to tell Trump no, or presidents, no, you can't do that, and hold things up, well, that's no longer going to happen. I'm going to wait for some more info to come out on that, and maybe I'll address it formally. That was just a quick bullet point I saw this morning, and it never made sense to me, right? How can a New York State judge tell the active president he can't do something? I can understand the Supreme Court, right? That makes sense. It's the Supreme Court of the land. But we'll move on there. Looks like Pam Bondi and Trump paired together there and got rid of birthright citizenship. We all know what birthright citizenship is. I'm not going to explain that. It's when somebody comes over here, or a couple come over here, and they have a baby in an American hospital, and since it was born here, it is an American. That goes back to slave days. There were a lot of undocumented slaves that had lived here, and it was a way of ensuring that their children would be represented and be Americans, even if, they were undocumented themselves. Guys, we're well beyond that. Birthright citizenship is crazy. The immigration policies we have or have had, we're just crazy. So that was cool as well. I'm glad Pam Bondi and Trump figured that out. Little steps like that are going to help us on this immigration journey. Now I want to get on to some bigger topic here. We saw the airstrike last week on the nuclear facilities, which, by the way, if you watch Top Gun Maverick, it's kind of weird how accurate it was, because it's basically the exact same mission that we did in real life. Woo, that's weird. That's weird. I'm going to rewatch that there and just get all that info taken back in, because it's just funny to me. So go watch Top Gun Maverick if you want to see what happened. That's probably the most relatable and the most understanding way of getting that info, because it's very much so what happened. But after that, we had the ceasefire. We all know that Iran and Israel, they fired after the ceasefire. Well, I want to explain what that might have been for people who don't know. Ayatollah, who is the leader of Iran, he could not simply sit there and do nothing. If he did, those people would kill him or they'd get rid of him. He had to show some teeth and raise his heckles. I'm telling you right now, he already knew there was nobody at the airstrip in Qatar. 100% he was not trying to kill Americans. That would have been the last thing he wanted to do for his country. I'm sure that he wanted to, but he's a little smarter than that. We would have decimated. So that was never his goal. He just had to do something to show the people that he retaliated. Those people don't have access to outside news media. The journalism's super restricted over there. So when he does something like that, he gets to chalk that up as a victory to his people and retain his leadership for a little bit longer. He's an old man. Most of the generals and people that are higher echelon leaders have already been killed or assassinated. And so he's just clinging on to leadership there. Now, the deal with Israel struck a surface-to-air radar, right below Tehran. And it wasn't some kind of nasty strike. It was really a way for Israel to show Iran, buddy, we can have you at any time. You didn't even know this was coming, and we did this right here beside your capital. So don't let the news make it out to be that they were just bombing everybody and that the ceasefire was null and void. No, they knew exactly what they were doing. I wasn't surprised at all. At all. I also have just a personal opinion here that this is going to kind of change topics, so let me flow into that. I've been on this immigration grind because I have a hard time understanding it. It was one of the things that made me change my Facebook name to Biden's Dumb, was letting millions and millions and millions of illegal immigrants from all over the world come in. We look at Europe and what they're dealing with immigration in Paris, all over regular Europe. We look at what's happening in Ireland, England, and it's kind of strange to me that it all has seemed to happen at the same time. And I have a theory, just a hypothesis here, that all these countries where these immigrants are coming from, well, they have a much higher relationship with China, with Russia. We know that China pays groups of people to create domestic disturbances here in the U.S. We know that most of these countries that don't like us get a large amount of their money from them. And I don't think it's random chance that everybody started migrating to white Western countries at the same time when they don't even like white Western countries. I really genuinely believe that there was probably a large amount of funding we do not know about from China and Russia for them to slowly invade our spaces. Maybe I'm wrong. It would explain a little bit of what's going on in England, why they're protecting them so much, England and Ireland. It would make sense why, because they got money. I'm saying it would make sense, by the way. The leaders in those countries got money from China secretly, maybe. It makes sense to me because it's really unexplainable without some kind of really far-fetched idea to explain it. And I don't think we really have any idea how much of a problem we're in right now with that. Guys, the immigration problem is not for regular Mexican families that have been here for 30 years and work every day and don't break the law. They are afraid of getting a speeding ticket because they don't want to get deported. That's not the problem. We all know that. I mean, it is a problem, but that's not the problem we're facing now. So I think there's something bigger going on there. I think maybe it was a way to weaken white Western culture and just send in mass amounts of foreigners and people who hate America to just simply create domestic disturbance, to get everybody fired up, keep their eye off the ball. So let Tom Holmgren deal with this. Let ICE deal with this. I think for the most part, this problem will be ratified. So just try to keep your eye on the ball. There are much bigger things going on right now that our voice communitively as Americans can help shape through social media, things like that, by writing your Congress members, by speaking to your local leadership, people in authority. Just pay attention, because a lot of times it's a distraction ploy. Hey, I'm going to throw a rock over there to the left and I'm going to run to the right. It's a lot of what goes on. So don't look to the left when the rock gets thrown. Be expecting the rock to be thrown and pay attention to the right. Guys, that's the end of our show today. Actually, I want to say one more thing about Teddy Roosevelt. One thing I wanted to say yesterday, so I've read a couple of books on him, and one of the books I read was written by his best friend growing up and all through his life. And while he was New York's governor, he had his best friend running that cattle ranch I told you about in the Dakotas. Well, he gets a letter from his friend that somebody was stealing cattle. Now, this is 1900. He's New York's governor. He doesn't write his friend back and say, take care of it or contact local authorities. No, he tells the guys in New York, I've got to go back to the Dakotas and deal with something. He gets on a train, goes all the way back to the Dakotas, mounts his trusted steed. He rides to his ranch, gets all the info, finds out where these guys are, and he rides on over to their little setup. He calls the guy out. They squabble it out like men, fisticuffs. Did it the old school style. A good old-fashioned bully beatdown. He wins. He gets his cows back. And he goes back to New York. That's the kind of men we used to have here, guys. It's the kind of men we still need. I know the law, the way we live now, it basically has ruined that. But I'm not letting nobody push me around. Don't let nobody push you around. I don't have a song of the day prepared, so give me about 2 seconds here and I'll think of something. It's a Saturday. Let's listen to a little Josh Malloy. And let's listen to Devil in Oklahoma. Guys, I hope you have a wonderful Saturday and the rest of your weekend. I'm going to be back to you on Monday for 10 minutes of good stuff. I love you. Go kick some tail today, too.